Vodafone Always Connected broadband technology, you get automatic network backup for your broadband. Come on, lads! Sorry. That's the power of our mobile and broadband networks together. Search Vodafone Always Connected.
Provides internet connection to 4G mobile network when loss of fixed broadband occurs. Eligibility limitations and terms apply. See vodafone.ie/terms.
Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.
Now then, you're welcome back. So the game at Croke Park is Limerick 2 points, Galway a point after just 2 minutes. We'll let that game settle down and we'll be across to Tommy Welch over the course of the next 70 minutes or so. We are turning to rugby. Liam Toland is on the line. Good afternoon.
How are you doing, Joe?
Yeah, very well. New Zealand 42, Ireland 19, 6 tries to 3. In some respects, Ireland did the difficult thing at Eden Park, which is start well and quell the initial onslaught, and then the onslaught came.
Yeah, like Ireland did an awful lot of really good things, and in my notes as I was watching the game here at home, I put the words like variety and their attacking shape and the type of players that were getting on the ball and the involvement. And Gibson Park had a really good platform. He was able to go down the blind side quite a lot. They had a number of tip-on plays. They had a number of plays where they tipped back inside. Sexton chipped the ball twice. It came off once and was unlucky not to come off a second time, which was going to lead to a possible score on the interception. So there was an awful lot of really good stuff. But at the same time, there was an awful lot of really good stuff the All Blacks were doing. We saw a different, and we talked about this last week, Joe. We felt that one of the key differences in our victory last year was the All Blacks looked a bit tired, but they also weren't physical as you'd expect them to be, and they relied entirely on their skill set. Well, yesterday they were a very different physical outfit. They targeted the breakdown. I think we should discuss a little bit about that. They also targeted a number of things like how they were defending the Irish, that whole pivot play around our first out half, Sexton or be it Carberry. And then they did things like when they were in possession, did a number of really interesting things, I thought. They carried a lot. I know that the try that Surveyor scored off Smith when he ran up through the breakdown, that wasn't the first time an All Black carried the ball, picked at the base of a ruck and just carried straight up the middle. That was a subtle change in what the All Blacks are doing. And they're also finding, and going back to Surveyor again, they're also finding the first forward receiver. We used to call it back in the day a face ball. They might put the ball out in front of maybe one or even two, and they'd hit the third All Black carrier. And when that third All Black carrier was Surveyor, and he was running at ring rows, boy, that was a pretty frightening sight. So they did an awful lot of really good things, the All Blacks, even in the time when Ireland were playing well. But I suppose the key differential in that time is Gibson Park had a slight go forward, and all of a sudden the sea change happened and the breakdown became cynical, it became horrible, it became violent. And I would, at this outset, Joe, raise the question, is it too much for one man to take control of that breakdown, one referee? And I was on to a referee this morning and I was trying to inquire how much can he actually share with his assistant referees? And there is a sharing of the role. But at the level these guys are playing at yesterday, I think it's beyond one man to control all that's going on, because there's so much stuff going on at every breakdown.
Yes.
And there's typically about 170 of them a match. And it has an influence on the outcomes of games.
Well, that's interesting because I was going to ask you about the breakdown, and it's hard not to think Joe Schmidt had some influence somewhere because he's so obsessed with the breakdown and he's so adept at coaching the breakdown. But regardless, you're talking there about there being so much going on for one referee to keep track of. Certainly Andy Farrell afterwards felt it was a question of interpretation of the laws. So what he said, Liam, was, we need some answers. It was quite forthright on the breakdown. We need some answers. There is a depth to a ruck and there is an entry to a ruck that we need confirming. Let's say it that way. Once it's confirmed, we'll get our act in order. There are a few things we need clarified. So what is he talking about there? And does he have a point? And how is this more interpretation, or as you maybe suggest, also a matter of, well, one man only has two eyes to see everything?
Yeah, I was saying the first thing, there was some very obvious stuff like Scott Barrett, the outlaw Josie Wales. What he did to Peter O'Mahony was definitely, that was right in front of the referee. That was cynical, horrible, filthy, dirty play. It's up to the referee if he sees it to establish what card comes out. But certainly a card should come out of that one. Absolutely, like that's totally. If no matter what numbers on your back, if you're performing the role of the scrum half at the breakdown, so typically it's a number 9, but it can be a number 6, you can't get hit, you can't get touched. You have the freedom to play that ball. Scott Barrett came in and smashed O'Mahony. O'Mahony, to my mind, wasn't part of the breakdown, therefore was deemed the de facto scrum half. The All Blacks did an awful lot. They came through and they engaged players that weren't in the ruck an awful lot. So they were powered through. Like when they counter ruck, that's one thing because you're powering on. But they came in and cleaned out. Maybe came in through the gate, the famous gate, but they carried out and they targeted loose players like Joshua van der Fleer, etc., to tie them up, to try and soak them in, to prevent Ireland putting a green wall of, say, 13 players in defence. That's cynical play, but it's clever play, and it requires a referee to change the behaviour of the players, which is what's the role of the referee. Now, if there's too much going on, now the Scott Barrett one, that referee should have seen that. But all the stuff with scragging guys, so you saw at one stage Porter swinging an arm, and I think it was probably Scott Barrett again, it might be Brodie Retallick. It was one of the beefy guys anyway, and he was swinging an exhausted right arm to try and break free. He wasn't in the ruck, yet an All Black was holding him and keeping him fixed in. So the All Blacks had a game plan, right? Now, there's a couple of things in this. One is how we referee this and how we interpret the laws. From my mind, there's no need to, I think Farrell was being very diplomatic in what he said. There's no need to go back and review what are the laws of the game, because what the All Blacks did, and you would expect Ireland to do a version of that too. So all teams are doing some of it, but the All Blacks are particularly good at doing it, and they're particularly good at getting away with it, especially at home. And you have to ensure that is refereed, okay?
And so sorry to interrupt briefly. For you then, that sounds like a case of just poor refereeing, not seeing blatant infringements, as opposed to an interpretation issue.
I don't think this is interpretation. I think this is either a referee, had an off day and makes mistakes, which referees do, players do as well. So I don't think we should be debating policy on a referee's mistake. We should be debating policy on what is the outcome of fixtures and how is the breakdown influencing it in the wrong way. And I would say yesterday there was an awful lot of what the All Blacks did and got away with it. Flip side, I could show you stuff the Irish players are doing too, but if we talk purely about the All Blacks, you would say there's an awful lot of things that they did and they got away with it, that the referee either missed because, like, the speed at which this stuff is happening is like and my instinct when I was watching it was, of course, in the first instance when I saw it, again, what do they call him, the outlaw Josie Wales, when Scott Barrett came in and cleared out Peter O'Mahony, I was livid. And then you kind of have to have some sense of acknowledgement that is there too much for the referee to be managing at that level? The speed at which these guys are working at and all that. And the All Blacks definitely had a game plan to say, we got bullied in Dublin, we ain't allowing that happen. We flirted with that concept last week, and the All Blacks managed to do that. Now, there's another thing as well, which I think is fixable. I think Ireland deserve huge credit in how we have evolved our attacking game. Now, we have switched our instinct from a total ruck focus under Joe Smith, evolving into an attacking shape. And there was examples that I saw yesterday where players under Joe Smith would not have peeled away into an attacking shape, they would have secured the ball. Okay, and there was a number of those examples. There was one where it was in that calamitous 15-minute period at the park. Box kicked, I think Carberry caught the ball. Carberry was engulfed by a bunch of animals. Now, Carberry ain't the kind of guy you want to leave in the midst of animals. And James Ryan, and I think it was Sheehan, both kind of peeled away back into an attacking. They were inside their own half, but their instinct under Joe Smith would be kill those All Blacks to ensure A, that Carberry survives, and B, the ball remains in possession. They peeled away. And all of a sudden, the All Blacks counter-rucked that, Carberry is swallowed, and ultimately that ended up in the score, I don't know, maybe a minute or so later. That's an example of how the Irish players have shifted their natural instinct under the greatest of pressure into, I need to get back into my attacking shape, where in that moment you'd say, hang on, that's my out half, who's probably the lightest, most timid player on the pitch, and that's no disrespect to him, that's just his position. He needs my absolute physical protection because he's under pressure. And in that moment, I said, wow, that's telling me something about how the Ireland are prioritising the breakdown at that level. Now, that needs to be fixed, because if you have Irish players going into contact, being swallowed up by a bunch of All Blacks, and then counter-rucked on top of that, it is not possible to slow the All Blacks down then. It is not possible to neutralise their skill set then. And that's one area that I think Ireland can certainly fix or address and make differences to. But it does beg the question, do we shift back our focus to a kind of an expanding game? Or do we understand in an 80-minute match, there's times you get beaten up, and in those times, you have to be loyal to the attacking shape, but you also have to read the room. Like what Gibson Park did, tapping the penalty as an example. Like, gee, because if I was a forward, I said, look, I'm absolutely exhausted. Give me time. Let us get into the far 22. Let's control the clock, the field position, and eke out a score. The last thing we needed in that moment. In those two examples, the last thing we needed was Gibson Park tapping that ball, but equally the last thing we needed was James Ryan and Sheehan leaving Carberry and getting into attacking shape, and poor old Carberry then gets killed. No?
Yeah, there are certain first principles that are unavoidable. Let's talk about the forwards a little bit. Paul O'Connell said overnight, it was poor last night, there's no doubt about it, and he bemoaned the 5 lost lineouts, which is a bad night at the office. I suppose what's more of a trend is the Irish scrum, and we touched on this during the week, and you've talked about your concerns. There is maybe a lack of emphasis on the Irish scrum at almost an institutional level. And Bernard Jackman, in his piece in the Sunday Independent, bemoans what's happened over much of the last decade and cites Greg Feek initially coming in to develop talent and then leaving that position, and wonders to what extent he has been replaced. And now suddenly, 18 months out from World Cup, we are where we are, and that is very threadbare. And if Kelleher if Porter or Furlong go down, we're suddenly in very, very big trouble. And what's more worrying still, I suppose, Liam, is even with Sheehan there and Porter there and Furlong there, the New Zealand scrum still had a huge amount of success. And, you know, Jackman says he wouldn't have them in the top 5 scrummaging sides in the world necessarily. So you kind of look at it, I don't know what Andy Farrell can do to fix that in the next year.
I suppose it's a sliding scale of challenges, because in the first instance it was a kind of a perfect storm. You kind of you could argue Ireland with only 40 in their travelling squad, should they have brought 50, for example? Should they have brought 60? Should they have brought 7? You know, and to lose the amount of players that Ireland lost through the COVID, through transitioning from Ireland, getting stuck in airports, and then you turn to Michael Bent and you kind of go, wow, he could be talking out for Ireland. And you kind of go, it is a bit of a perfect storm in that sense. I think we have to frame it in that way in its own right? Those circumstances are unlikely to repeat themselves. But I would say, as I'm developing the thought in my mind, that you've got to give Andy Farrell enormous credit for how he reacted after the game. You know, he wasn't looking for excuses. I don't think he's that type of character. But he said, having it easy. Someone asked him after the game, you know, are you lucky that you're not playing the Maoris this Tuesday or Wednesday, you know, and as opposed to next week? And he said, having it easy, is that what we want? And clearly there's an ambition where he wants his coaching staff to be tested. He wants the players, the logistics of it all to be tested, the players to be tested. And we mentioned again last week how the fringe players, the guys who are still a long way off that level, he wants them to be tested at the elite level. So he's now in the middle of probably the most difficult rugby experience his management, and indeed all the players are ever going to have. Is it likely that they're going to face these challenges again? That all said, I think that there has been a sea change in how we want our props to play. Yes, we have a freak called Cian Healy who could scrummage, he could line out lift, he could counter up, he could catch, he was, you know, for 10, 15 years he's been phenomenal. Tyke Furlan is of that ilk. But the likes of Mike Ross, the value of a Mike Ross is just enormous. Like, Mike Ross wasn't the most comfortable rugby footballer, but his value was immense. And I think there has been, whether it's just the general public who've tired of the value of scrums, or is the IRFU in a sense, but I think we need set piece players first. And if they can play rugby beyond that, that's an added bonus.
Right.
We've been probably looking to the swashbuckling front row players before getting the scrummaging bit right. Like someone like John Ryan in Munster, super rugby player and a super prop. Never really got the huge value that I think he deserved. There's an example of a guy who does a really good job at set piece time. but isn't a Tyke Furlong, isn't a Cian Healy, and probably doesn't get the merits what it does. And O'Toole coming on Saturday, like, that's amazing to think, like, you know, he's definitely in his development phase, but to see him, like, how many tighthead props get to play the All Blacks in Eden Park, like, it's outrageous. He's in a very select group, so the lessons being learned are huge as well. Going into what you were referring to about what Bernard Jackman was talking about, that's an institutional thing, and I think I would agree with you. I think the general rugby public has been blinded by the great St. Michael's School churning out back rows and second rows. We have to be very hungry about how we rebuild our front row options, and we seem very, very threadbare. Very, very threadbare. And players like Dennis Buckley, for example, and Connacht, who maybe he's not playing at the level he was playing 4 or 5 or 6 years ago. He hasn't got a shot at it at all. There's younger players who are coming in. At what point should they be fast-tracked into the senior side? These are all troubling challenges, but if we revisit a storm like this next year, well, we're going to lose games that we shouldn't be losing because of it.
Yeah. Stay with us, Liam. I suspect you might be interested in the next update, though, as well. Tommy Welch is at Croke Park. We're 18 minutes gone. Tommy, Limerick were well ahead. It's deficit now back to 3.
Yeah, well, that just went wide. It looked like it was going over the bar. It's 8 points to 4, 18 minutes gone. So listen, it's very much open in the full forward line for Limerick. They start off at 5 points on the trot within a couple of minutes. Gillan scored 3, Seamus Flanagan scored 2. Really firing on all cylinders. It's kind of gone a lot more physical now for Galway. Park Mannion is after coming into the game. Ronan Glennon is after scoring 2 great points at midfield, and so is Tom Monaghan, the number 10. 2 guys who look very, very similar. Here's Kyle Hayes in now to stretch it out again to 9 points to 4, a 5-point lead. Very much an open game. They are going mostly man to man, I would say, Joe, but Limerick look very, very comfortable even at these early stages. But in fairness to Galway, they are putting it up to him. Pádraig Mannion is probably the best performer in defence, but very wide open spaces inside.
I'm not watching as closely as you. Television scoreboard has it at 9-5. What does the Croke Park scoreboard have Galway at?
9-4.
Okay.
Yeah,
you reckon it's 4, do you?
Sorry, no, I actually have it as 9-5.
Right.
I have it at 5. Sorry, I was looking at the scoreboard. No, it's 9-5. You're right.
9-5. Okay.
Glennon has 2, Monaghan has 2, and Conor Cooney is after scoring a free. But yeah, so listen, you wouldn't know. Like these games, it looked like Galway or Limerick going to run away with it, Joe. But sometimes if you can stay in the game, and suddenly then you can start getting cold feet, like the Limerick lads. You know, when it's so easy at the start, suddenly it turns into a battle, and you're like, what's going on here? So listen, the longer they stay in this game, Galway, the better it is.
Tommy, thanks for the time being. 20 minutes gone. Limerick 9, Galway 5. We're talking rugby with Liam Toland. Our rugby coverage on Off the Ball is with Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us. I suppose another point, Liam, if we're looking at this whole game and trying to do a full analysis, remiss of us not to mention just those careless moments in possession where Ireland effectively gifted New Zealand tries, because even the stats are kind of not insignificant when you think of the scoreline. So Ireland had 58% possession, they had 60% territory. Defenders beaten, Ireland 15, New Zealand 14. Offloads, New Zealand 4, Ireland 8. And penalties, New Zealand gave away 15, Ireland gave away 10. If I got you to look at the stats first and the scoreboard second, you'd be quite taken with that. But it doesn't take New Zealand long to score a try, as we know.
Another stat, Joe, is we scored 3 tries, and we had, you know, arguably 2 more tries that were as close to tries as you could possibly think of. So we could have come out of that fixture having lost and in many ways been beaten badly in certain aspects of our game, and still scored 5 tries in Eden Park. Now that's a phenomenal, you know, like that's why I'm so troubled this morning. I was trying to think of how would I actually frame this the fixture, and there's I think probably one of the key things here is, as I've already referred to, is the instinct to switch from a kind of an all-out rucking team into an evolving team that can play a variety of games, and the risk that lies therein, okay? And if the natural instinct is to hunt for an offload and hunt for space and do the footballing stuff under the most severe of pressures, well, we've learned that we're not quite there. We've learned that in that cauldron of the most severest of pressures, and the All Blacks did that, and you know, the All Blacks, I suppose in 12 months' time, are going to be infinitely better than they currently are. But they put the Irish skill set under huge pressure. And in those moments, now, I don't know whether the ball, by the way, has any impact in it or not, but certainly the New Zealanders are more comfortable in those moments than the Irish were. Now, is that a lesson worth learning now? Absolutely. And I would take a huge amount of positivity from the fixture. I know the country is depressed and whatever else, but I would take a huge amount of positivity. What we have tried our running game that has been evolving. It came into a black wall of pressure and it broke down. And a couple of things broke down, like the act of physical breakdown I was talking about, like that's worthy of probably a show in itself. But that how Ireland needs to look at that and shift its instinct towards that. I gave you an example, the one with James Ryan and Shima. The decision-making process when Sexton wasn't on the field, that Gibson Park tap penalty and other decisions that were made. The James Ryan penalty, I think he was very, very unlucky to concede that penalty when Scrum Half Smith was messing around with the ball. But what lesson can Ryan learn from that if he faced the same thing again? Would he communicate different to the referee before he bit in on the chance? There was errors and mistakes that started to arise when the All Black pressure became ferocious. They're lessons really worth learning now, absolutely worth learning now, because it gives the management and the players time to adjust. Okay, if we played against that level of physicality, our game plan might come unstuck. What do we do if that happens? What do we do if we concede a sucker punch like that try from Reece? What do we do? Do we abandon our game plan or do we adjust it accordingly? And I think they're the lessons at the level these guys are playing at that are really worthwhile learning in this pressure cooker. The pieces that really worry me is how we got bullied in many ways. Now, I talked about James Ryan last week about the importance of him imposing himself on the fixture. And if you want an example of imposing on the fixture, you look at Josh van der Fleer and say, that guy is just world-class, phenomenal in everything he's doing. So if we turn around and say guys are tired, well, how does Josh van der Fleer perform like that?
Yeah,
he's supposed to be tired. So what's allowing him to achieve that and others not imposing? So James Ryan at times isn't like, we really miss, and I mentioned it last week, Henderson, that type of old school second row. I thought Henderson against Munster, by the way, in Ravenhill, whatever they call it, a couple of weeks back was phenomenal. You know, old school stuff, but played rugby when the opportunity came his way. And we desperately need second rows who can do that, because we're missing that. We're missing, and you saw Brodie Retallick and Whitelock, the impact they did, stealing lineouts, double teaming around the fringes, bullying whenever any Irish jersey came away. I think didn't Brodie Retallick tackle Ringrose at one stage out in the middle of the park? You know, that's what you want to see James Ryan doing. So we want that reboost again. The scrum we've mentioned is an issue, and the lineout, I've no doubt, will be fixed. Like the breakdown of the lineout can be fixed. The scrum is an issue if the personnel aren't there. And I think there's an awful lot of really good, valuable lessons learned yesterday.
And then the other issue, what if Johnny Sexton isn't there?
That's I genuinely think of all the players I've seen, I think Frawley looks like the guy who can play rugby, has the head for it at the level he's playing. We won't know until he's absolutely tested, and has the physicality to actually play the rugby the way Farrell wants to play. I'm not entirely sure what I see in Carberry is a guy who, even, I know it's only a snapshot, but the video was on in the dressing room at half time, and Carberry was sitting there listening away to whoever was leading the talk. You want your 10 to just step up and take absolute bullish ownership of and all quarterbacks, the best in the world, all out halves, the best in the world, the same. They may take control in a subtly different way. One might shout and scream, others might be quiet, but you want that. At this stage, I assume Carberry will start. I assume, by the way, and we've had more controversy on the
I'll come to that.
Concussions. You know, when Heffernan went into contact.
We'll come to that in a moment. But yeah, you can finish the Carberry point. We're assuming he's starting, but then Andy Farrell was at pains to say, well, Sexton hasn't been ruled out yet, which almost, whether Sexton plays or not, I think it shows the sense of reliance on Sexton that even after failing HIA 1, that Farrell does not want him ruled out at all.
Okay, there's a couple of issues. I think Frawley, I'm beginning my instinct, my natural kind of, I think Frawley looks like a guy who's beginning to say, I think that guy is a fella I could play with. He strikes me as a confident guy. He's physical. He can play, he can kick, he can change his game plan. I'm not seeing the same in Carberry.
Right.
Now, I just don't know, is he going to... Now, you have to forgive both Carberry, all the other halves, they've very little pitch time, between all the injuries. Like Frawley's obviously got almost no pitch time as a 10, and Carberry's had very little pitch time because of all his injuries. He played in Paris against France, having not played in, so he's very little rugby in him. So it's very difficult to judge. But my own kind of instinct would suggest I'd nearly take a look at Frawley on this tour.
Interesting. Liam, can you stay with us a moment? Just a very quick ad break. I do want to ask you about the HIA concussion situation, which has caused much consternation. Back in just 1 second. The latest at Croke Park, we'll have a chat with Tommy at half time, but it's Limerick 12, Galway 8, 4-point lead after 28 minutes. Back in 1 moment.
Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us. This weekend on News Talk, we've got a great prize for you. A €1,000 holiday voucher with thanks to the Avant Money Reward Plus credit card. Find out more and enter now at newstalk.com/money. Avantcard DAC trading as Avant Money is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
It's the final weekend of the Harvey Norman Big Sale and your last chance to save big on beds, mattresses and bed linen. Get up to 30% off our range of EU safety certified bunk beds so your little ones can sleep soundly. Save up to a massive 45% on in-stock Irish-made mattresses, ready for quick delivery. Plus, get up to 70% off cotton duvet covers. For big savings this summer, shop the Harvey Norman Big Sale, in-store and online. Must end Sunday.
Pop over to McGillicuddy Reeks. Treat Poolbeg Lighthouse like it's just around the corner. Cliffs of Moher? No bother.
Everywhere is within cycling distance with Veloci, Belgium's best-selling electric bike. Save up to €1,000 on your Veloci e-bike. Get yours now, exclusively at independentshop.ie.
Tesco Club Card is the power to lower prices on hearty favourites like Fire Pit Ultimate Burgers 400g and 6 Jumbo Sausages 600g, any 3 for €10. Plus try our Fresh 5 offer. Pick up fun-sized Easy Peelers 500g, Suntrail Farms plums 400g, whole cucumber and more, now 49cent each. It can't stop the kids hiding them though. Nothing's that powerful. Lower the cost of your shop with your Tesco Club Card or app. The power to lower prices. Tesco. Every little helps. Product subject to availability. Excludes express stores.
Summer is a season for good times, for laughter, for friends old and new, and smooth pints of Guinness. Summer's a time when anything seems possible. Even a bit of sunshine. It's a lovely day for a Guinness.
Jolly good company.
Get the facts. Be drink aware. Visit drinkaware.ie.
Ever been at a friend's and they say, make yourself at house? Didn't think so. A house is bricks and mortar, but a home is alive with the story of who we are. Find your perfect home on myhome.ie. Thousands of homes, one address.
Hello, I'm Liz O'Donnell, Chairperson of the Road Safety Authority. Summer is here, and while many of us are looking forward to holidays across the island, it's important to ensure we travel safely on our roads. So please, plan your route ahead of time. Stay alert on unfamiliar roads. Keep off your phone while driving. And if you're tired, take a rest. Remember, stay cautious on your staycation. A message from the Road Safety Authority and An Garda Síochána.
This summer, you've got a giant choice on your hands. Will it be a magical glamping escape in the Mourns at Further Space? Or a luxurious stay at the Causeway Coast's latest boutique hotel, Elephant Rock? An adrenaline-fueled outdoor adventure in Tyrone at Todd's Leap? Or the one-of-a-kind Game of Thrones studio tour in Banbridge? A Dairy Girls-themed afternoon tea? Or a night of sumptuous cocktails and craft beers in Belfast? And that's just the start of it. Whatever you're looking for in a short break this summer, there's a place for everyone in Northern Ireland. Choose your own giant adventure at discovernorthernireland.com.
Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.
Welcome back. Let's go over to Croke Park. 32 minutes on the clock. Tommy Welch, we're back to a single point. 13-12.
Yes, Joe, and what did Cyril Farrell used to say to Ger Canning? Game on now, Ger. Oh, it's been brilliant the last couple of minutes. And just to clear up what happened earlier on with the score. So the scoreboard in Croke Park was correct, but a good number of passages of play went on. And we went back to Hawkeye 3 minutes later, and they cancelled the score.
Wow.
And if Hawkeye wasn't today, and this is the true value of Hawkeye, if Hawkeye wasn't here today, Galway would be 1 point up. It'd be 14 points to 13 because it cancelled another score that the umpire gave for Galway as well. So this shows the positivity of technology. Now I'd like to see too much more technology come into it. Hawkeye is enough. But, true value here for Hawkeye here today. And they've got a lot of criticism over the years. But listen, they're playing a major part in today's game. But Cathal Mannion has scored the last two. Tom Monaghan is flying it. Glennon is flying it. Cooney is scoring all the frees. David Burke is playing well midfield. Limerick then, Glan scored his 4 point from play. Kyle Hayes scored 2 points from play. So listen, it's really good. What has changed in the last couple of minutes, and I think the reason that Galway have come back into it, Joe, is that they had Cathal Mannion kind of staying back for the puck outs, which left a spare player in the full back line for Limerick for the puck outs. But they're now after pushing up man on man. So because as I said to you, you give the ball to that Limerick back line, they'll come out. Darragh O'Donovan, sorry, before you go, is having a stormer for Limerick in the middle of the field. He's on the ball again here now.
Good man. We'll talk at half time. Limerick 13, Galway 12, 32 minutes on the clock. Tommy Welch with us at half time. Liam Toland patiently waiting as we finish up thoughts on the New Zealand win against Ireland. So this tour has quickly made concussion a big talking point once again, Liam. I suppose 3 incidents really. There's the Jeremy Loughman one, which we discussed on Wednesday, and subsequent to that, New Zealand Rugby conducted an investigation and concluded Loughman shouldn't have returned to the field of play. I mean, what's remarkable about the Loughman situation is how clear-cut the rule is and how clearly it was broken. The World Rugby guidelines is that if a player is showing any signs of a concussion on the pitch, then they don't even take the HIA. They are just simply out of the game. Loughman was very visibly showing signs of concussion, and somehow the request for a HIA went in. He passed the HIA, which brings, I think, the validity of the HIA into question once again, and he came back onto the field. And it seems, and we're not quite sure why this is the case, but it seems it was only at half time that the video of Loughman looking very unstable and falling over was brought to the attention of the Irish medical team. It was only at half time they seemed to see that video. And it also seems that the independent doctor who carried out the HIA never saw the video of Loughman looking visibly concussed on the field, and so went ahead with the HIA. It seems in part it's because some of the same infrastructure isn't around a game that isn't a full-on test, which doesn't seem overly satisfactory. And Brendan Fanning asked the question in the Sunday Independent, well, who from the Irish camp did the recce and why were they happy with the lack of tech facilities? And then we had Dave Heffernan yesterday, similar carry to Loughman. He was assessed initially on the pitch and subsequent to that played on for a couple of minutes, 2.5 minutes. He scrummaged, cleaned, carried, and then he was called ashore. And as Brendan Fanning said in his piece, again, mercifully he didn't make a tackle in that time frame. Seemingly there was communication between the Irish medical team and the independent matchday doctor over the video evidence, and the latter decided to take the player off. So again, stayed on probably for 2.5 minutes too long. And then on Sexton, everybody saw the incident. He failed his HIA 1 and he has subsequently passed his HIA 2, and it seems if he passes HIA 3 over the coming days, then technically he's allowed play on Saturday, whereas the likes of Heffernan and now Loughman are out for 12 days. So I think technically there's a likelihood Sexton will be available. As for instinctively whether people think it's right or wrong he plays, that's a greyer matter. Particularly the Loughman case, it calls a lot of things into question, doesn't it?
I find it very, very troubling, and we talked about this during the week, and I wasn't committal to one thing or another because I'm not aware of what's happening under the stand. I remember when the new policy came out, a bunch of us involved in commentary were brought to the Aviva Stadium, and we walked and talked through the process as was then. The HIA process and et cetera, and I was under the impression then, to start about that, the RFU were determined to follow the guidelines and do what was right. Okay, now one could debate the guidelines in the first instance. This sort of stuff brings those guidelines into disrepute straight away. That said, my understanding at the time was that there was the technology that there is a video technology available to the medical staff who will be able to see. So in other words, if you, Joe, are the doctor, and I'm the video nerd, will say, and we're sitting beside each other, and you're going out to the pitch, I will be able to review what has happened in the last 30 seconds, 40 seconds regarding that player, and I'll be able to communicate that to you over the wire as you're going out on the pitch. So by the time it takes Joe to cross the far side of the pitch, 30 seconds or a minute, whatever.
Yeah.
You will be aware. I'm telling you. I said, this guy's got a double hit. Like Heffernan, I'm sitting here in Limerick. I saw it.
I know.
I saw him go into double hit. I saw that he didn't get up, and when he did get up, I saw him wobble. Now I'm thousands of miles away. So my understanding was that was by the time the medical staff get out there, they're aware of what might have happened to this player before they even get to meet him. That makes a lot of sense. Now, if that was what I understood was happening, it's clearly not happening now, or if it is, that they're ignoring it. I can't imagine for a moment they're ignoring it, but what you've just described is appalling at a multi-billion euro industry, that we have players exposed to that type of outcome, and we don't have some sort of technology to go, well, what happened to this guy? Why is he under pressure? So I'm really troubled by the whole thing. And what it does is it questions everything then, because if Sexton is cleared fit based on the protocol, my own instinct is telling me it would be appalling if he plays at the weekend, considering he came off because of a hit to the head and he failed the first test, and if he subsequently passes future ones, I think that's an appalling look. I think there's a lot of problems with what we've been experiencing the last 10 days or so.
Yeah, because whatever about the second test against New Zealand, if we fast forward 18 months and Johnny Sexton was to fail HIA 1 in a World Cup game and then pass HIA 2 and HIA 3, and there was a World Cup quarter or semi-final, then I think we both know the likelihood of Johnny Sexton playing in World Cup quarter final or semi-final, if he's allowed to and if he's cleared to, is that he would play. And so again, that brings not so much Andy Farrell into question, because he could argue very strongly that he's abiding by the laws set down by people who have medical knowledge that most of us don't have. So I'm just following the rules and I'm entitled to play him, so I'll play him. And you could argue he's within his rights to do that, because it can't be up to it can't be left to coaches to see, well, you know, are they just going to go a step beyond what they're required to do in the interest of player welfare? Because most coaches are in the business of winning. So it calls the HIA system into question once again. And you know, on the Lockman and Heffernan ones, I mean, we're using the phrase technology. Let's just remind ourselves, we're talking about television. You know, it's like we're not sending people to the moon here.
A mobile phone will get you there. Like, but that was my understanding when I went to that brief. And I said, bravo to the RFU. They're gone to trouble bringing us in, and they're walking us through the whole thing. And that's pretty good. They're making an effort, and it was a great few hours, and I listened intently. But I certainly got that impression that the doctor, when they arrive on the scene of the incident, will have the value of what would have happened to that player before they even get to that scene. So they'll already go, oh, it's an ankle injury. Oh, like that. Did you see the Australia-Wales game yesterday when the Australia fullback Ariel came down and landed on his left hand, and it looks like his forearm just snapped? Oh my, it was horrific. But like, they would have known by the time they got out there that it's a forearm problem, because they would have been able to see it, you know? So it's especially important when it's not a bone, but when it's actually the head. So if you take Heffernan as an example, like, how can I see that here and the medical team struggle to see that down there? And that's a real problem.
A real problem, yeah. It's bizarre. I genuinely don't understand what happened or what's not happening there. It just makes no sense. And what about that point then on asking coaches almost to go a step beyond the protocol? So there's every likelihood, it seems, if he's passed HIA 2, I presume he's a good chance of passing HIA 3. We're then at a point where the rules are saying to Andy Farrell, well, this player is past fit. He's, you know, absolutely entitled to select him. Yeah. We're kind of asking Andy Farrell to just exercise what he, you know, someone could argue is undue caution. I mean, like, how far do you want me to go? Do I not play him again in the third test? Where does it end?
Exactly. It's not a good look, because Sexton he'll be 37, won't he, next week?
Yeah, 38, I think. Or 37, sorry, 38 the World Cup. Yeah, 37.
He's obviously comes off the pitch a lot with injuries and stuff, so it's not a great look that your marquee player keeps coming off the pitch injured. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is, in isolation, if this was the only issue on the tour, you would say, okay, that makes the decision a little less controversial. But when you back it up to the previous couple of instances, now I think the Irish management are in a really difficult position, because they have, in many ways, the previous 2 concussions haven't been managed as well as they should have done. We accept that, don't we?
Yeah.
So now the third one, you're kind of going, guys, you might have to go the extra mile here to do the right thing, because the game doesn't need this controversy, because it'll be a talking point, and it'll be a talking point with our player. So whether they've made a rod for their own back is another, that'd be a little harsh. But I agree with you. It absolutely should not be like Andy Farrell's decision here. It's an impossible decision to make, and it definitely shouldn't be the players. So who then makes that decision? And maybe out of all of this, we'll get some new appointment that will manage a more independent person. I don't know, but it looks horrible, and I think he shouldn't play. But that's my own personal opinion. I have no access to his medical. I haven't a clue. If I have to take on face value that if he's declared fit, he's fit. Based on all the best medicine. But the problem is, the last 2 declarations haven't been properly done. Therefore, you now question everything, don't you?
Sure do, unfortunately. Liam, we're out of time. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
No worries. Take care.
Liam Toland with us there. So Monday Night Rugby tonight, I'm sure I'll get into it. And the lads on AM will be talking rugby as well across the week. Let's go back to Croke Park, where at half-time it is Limerick 16 points, Galway 12. 4-point lead at the break. Tommy Welch is